Over the last year, 3 Inner Side has discovered a disturbing trend within the Jackson Police Department, a lack of transparency that could threaten the safety of those who live within the capital city. Chief Investigative Reporter C.J. LeMaster joins us now to explain this pattern of secrecy.
Howard, from requesting details on deadly officer-involved shootings to asking for the number of active duty officers, time and time again, each was met with silence for weeks. In more than one case, we had to threaten legal action just to get an answer. Perhaps more troubling was what we found in the department's own weekly crime reports. So we got one of the leading experts in the country, a criminologist and former NYC police captain, to go through all this too, double-check what we found, and tell us what it all means for the capital city.
Clearly, there's something going on here. This is not to be whitewashed. This is serious. This is people's lives.
For nearly a year, an analysis of weekly CompStat reports from the Jackson Police Department shows the public's been sold a safer picture of Jackson than what actually exists. 3 on Your Side found discrepancies in JPD's crime statistics, specifically year-to-date numbers of major crimes.
The pattern should just remain the same throughout the data. This is Basic Statistics 101.
But that pattern did change and showed significantly lower numbers on at least 3 dates, like May 20th, July 22nd, and October 14th. What's so special about those dates? Those weekly reports were selected by JPD to be released on social media.
If you're seeing a pattern that's occurring and suddenly on dates of release, you're seeing a decrease in those numbers, it's a red flag.
Here are all the official releases. Notice the gaps, because JPD sometimes waited months to release these weekly numbers. Look at grand larcenies, for example. If all you saw was what the department released, you'd think we had a 55% drop in grand larcenies versus the previous year. That's huge. It's also not true. We got those missing weeks from JPD through an open records request, and it shows a much different reality for the capital city, higher crime. When we asked the chief about this, he deferred to one of his commanders.
The program, the outdated program that we were using, were pulling out of the larcenies. It wasn't separating grand larceny or misdemeanor.
Commander Tyrone Buckley says that problem started when the law which defined grand larceny changed. But that change didn't happen in 2018. Legislators updated that law more than 4 years ago, which makes you wonder if this problem had been happening before 2018. We found no evidence of fluctuating numbers in 2017.
The discrepancy appears to be throughout the year, so we haven't narrowed down to a specific date, time frame, or so forth.
But we did, and we provided that to the department 2 weeks ago. Those are the same dates that JPD released numbers to the public. So every time that those numbers were released to the public on social media, for example, those numbers were lower. Anybody want to take that one?
Well, I can assure you, I don't know why those numbers were lower when we came in office. I don't know the reporting date, the actual date that these numbers are reported. However, we identified that problem and we are making steps to correct that problem. Right. I don't know why they was reported on that day.
It's a strange coincidence, right?
Well, I don't think it's strange. It's just we're not perfect by no means. You check anywhere, you're going to find discrepancies in numbers and wherever you go and whatever you do. We're not hiding numbers. We don't have anything to hide.
Criminologist Johnny Turno doesn't buy it.
There is no outside agency reviewing these statistics. Those crimes are more likely to be manipulated because they know they are being judged on those basic crimes.
He should know, Eterno's a former NYC police captain whose research proved the NYPD's own crime reporting wasn't accurate.
The best that we can hope for from the police department is they be more transparent and try to work with the public to fight real crime and not play with these numbers.
So how much do those inaccuracies affect Jackson's total crime picture? Look at July 15th. At that point, overall crime in 2018 was 5% higher than the previous year. It was about the same on July 29th, but the stats for July 22nd, released by the Jackson Police Department, the only public release in July, contradict that. That 5% increase became a 5% decrease to the public.
This makes me uncomfortable because it just makes me feel like the department has something to hide.
There's no good way to spin this. If the numbers are not being presented accurately in a timely manner, that's something that's bad for the city of Jackson and needs to be addressed.
That lack of transparency also extended into recent deadly officer-involved shootings in Jackson. We waited for weeks on incident reports from 2 of those deadly shootings. What we got were retyped reports instead of the originals, meaning we couldn't tell what JPD might have taken out. In this case, employees removed portions of the narrative from both cases that would have given the public a better idea of what happened when Crystalline Barnes and Nathaniel Fleming were killed by officers.
So if there's an ongoing investigation, you're going to get limited information, and you can't hold that against the police department because of an ongoing investigation.
We did get limited information until we threatened legal action against JPD, and they released the full narrative. But that withholding of information also extends to personnel. For months, JPD couldn't even produce the number of active duty officers on the streets for us. We asked because multiple sources within JPD tell us that number had dropped to what they called dangerous levels.
We had actually been trying to get that number since mid-November through an open records request.
You could have just called me. I would have told you.
But Davis didn't even tell reporters how many officers he would have after a new recruit class of 29 graduated in December because he didn't know.
I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but it's going to make a big dent in our reduction.
Now he says 180 of JPD's finest active duty officers are protecting the public.
That would be 60 officers per shift, right?
I haven't did the numbers.
If you got 3 shifts, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, you got 60. For a city of 160,000 plus, when you hear that number, what goes through your head?
Nothing goes in my head. I know what we're doing. We're providing police service. We're filling all our beats. We're providing the best police service possible with what we have. We're not looking for an excuse.
And if their investigation into these modified crime stats shows someone is responsible, Davis says they'll take appropriate action, even though he doesn't believe it was intentional.
Really, you owe it to the victims. That's really the concern, that the victims are falling through the cracks when either we don't take reports or we massage reports. We see it over and over again, and watchdogs like the media need to be on top of it.
Now, hours ago, Chief Davis called me and asked me if the numbers in my analysis were factual and if I could back up what I said. I told him I stand behind what I reported. After all, the numbers come from his department. He also gave another reason for those decreases in crimes we noted. Officers might downgrade crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. Well, if that's true, based on JPD's own reports, it would mean the department downgraded 200 grand larcenies one week and upgraded them back to felonies the next week. You can see the data for yourself on our website, WLBT.com.
Shortly after our 3 on Your Side investigation revealed inconsistencies with the Jackson Police Department's own crime statistics, links pointing to those crime stats have now disappeared from the city's website. Chief Investigative Reporter CJ LeMaster joins us live now from JPD headquarters with this follow-up.
Yeah, Maggie, I actually talked to JPD Chief James Davis earlier today, and he said those links were actually removed because they're rebuilding that part of the website. And I want to show you something. This is a still from what you may have seen if you went to the website back in December. We actually had this in our archives because the wrong chief was listed on the site. Look at the links to the left. Here's what you see now. The crime stats and crime maps links have been removed. Now, this change happened just days after our 3 on Your Side investigation revealed inconsistencies with the department's CompStat reports, where numbers in certain crime categories would suddenly be significantly lower on specific dates. Those lower numbers would then be released by the department on social media. At the time, Chief James Davis told us his department was working through those problems and trying to correct them. Here's what Chief Davis said when I called him earlier today, quote, "From this day forward, we're putting out everything the FBI gets. That's what the police department will be posting." Now, of course, the chief referring to the uniform crime report data that JPD provides the FBI. When we asked Davis if this change had anything to do with our investigation, he said, "We care less about that." Now, we just received word from the city of Jackson. Spokesperson Candace Cole told us that those numbers will actually be released on the 15th of every month, and she believes it will actually start this month.
Well, the Jackson Police Department is changing the way it discloses crime statistics to the public, and we can confirm tonight it happened as a result of our 3 on Your Side investigation into inaccuracies in JPD's weekly reports. But in today's first new crime stats meeting, one key detail was left out. Chief Investigative Reporter CJ LeMaster joins us now to explain.
Yeah, Maggie, we're actually talking about the crime stats themselves. Chief James Davis said at the beginning that this public meeting would be directly to the numbers, but none of the officers mentioned specific numbers of major crimes this morning, like, for example, how many house burglaries we had for the week, month, or year. In many cases, those officers would say generic things like, well, for week 3, those property crimes continued to decrease, or we dropped 50% from one week to the next. But without being able to look at the numbers or no specific dates, it doesn't really give us a clear picture of crime in Jackson at all. Chief Davis did confirm at the beginning that these meetings are a direct result of questions our 3 on Your Side investigation raised about certain crimes fluctuating up and down. We actually found when those numbers plunged, the department released those reports to the public on social media. Now, you may remember that the city told us last week they'd start releasing these new crime stats on the 15th of each month. Well, today's the 15th, and we're still waiting on those to be posted.
Well, the department and the city promised a new system, but they're still leaving the public in the dark after abruptly canceling a crime stats meeting this morning. Chief Investigative Reporter C.J. LeMaster joins us to explain.
After our investigation revealed that Jackson's police department wasn't being truthful about the safety of its city through inaccurate crime reports, JPD's police chief assured us that would change. The city's spokesperson Candace Cole told us in early February they'd start releasing the same monthly stats they send the FBI in meetings and online. Now, for the second month, those promises haven't been kept. JPD canceled today's Uniform Crime Report meeting with the public. Now, you may remember Chief James Davis saying last month that these meetings would only be about the numbers, but they failed to release any specific numbers during last month's meeting, and nothing's been posted to the city's website.
After nearly 2 months, Jackson's police department is now sharing the capital city's crime picture online, releasing those February numbers to the public. Chief Investigative Reporter C.J. LeMaster joins us now with this follow-up.
Yeah, Howard, this is what the department's putting out now. More detailed information on fewer types of crimes. Now, before our investigation exposed inaccuracies in JPD's weekly CompStat reports, and they stopped compiling and releasing those, you would get breakdowns of 10 major crimes, violent and property crimes. You could also see quickly if those crimes were going up or down with percentage amounts. Now, in the new reports, we're getting far more detailed information, like what types of weapons were used on 8 main types of crime. JPD no longer releases specific numbers of auto burglaries or carjackings, though, and there's no percent change column either, meaning you can't just glance and see if homicides or rapes are going up or down. So why did it take so long to post these numbers in the first place? Police Chief James Davis says they never released January's report because city employees were still finalizing it.
From crime statistics that don't tell the whole truth to details of high-profile killings intentionally left out, we've established over the last 3 months that certain aspects of the Jackson Police Department remain shrouded in secrecy. Well, tonight, many members of the rank and file tell us JPD staffing is at a critical shortage. Chief Investigative Reporter C.J. LeMaster explains.
Howard, Police Chief James Davis doesn't want to talk to us on camera about this. Now, the chief hasn't done a one-on-one interview with us since we confronted him about those inaccurate crime stats in January and got a visibly stunned command staff. In that interview, Davis gave us the number of active duty patrolmen keeping us safe, and tonight, exclusive documents obtained by 3 on Your Side contradict what the chief told us about his own department.
You could have just called me. You could have just called me.
And you would have told me.
I would have told you.
That was Chief James Davis's response in January after months of silence from the Jackson Police Department when we tried to find out how many active duty officers they have.
The number's active, 180 patrolmen.
3 on Your Side obtained this internal memo written by Deputy Chief Tiny Harris, which came out 3 months before Davis gave us that number, and it paints a more dire picture, showing fewer officers on the job than Davis told us, 161. Davis declined an on-camera interview for this story, so we asked him about those lower numbers over the phone Friday. He acted like he hadn't heard of those numbers before. The chief told us during that phone call that the numbers change from week to week, and he just cited something off the top of his head when he talked to us, but the city's top cop told city council members that same number 1 week before our one-on-one interview. When I reminded Davis of that, he said, quote, "You know, you had people retiring, you had people on leave, you had people come back. We have hired people. If I didn't read those numbers out right there to you, I was probably telling you the latest numbers that I know of. If the latest latest numbers weren't the fact right then, you can't crucify me for a number, end quote. That phone conversation turned into Davis interrupting my questions and telling me I should be investigating other agencies because, according to him, they have shortages too. At no point during that phone call did the chief say he thought those staffing numbers were alarming. Is it a critical problem at this point, you think?
I think it's beyond critical. I think our finances are beyond critical. I think that we're focused on the fluffs of things. I mean, it's good to hear that Bloomberg is going to give some money for art, but art's not our problem.
Further complicating Jackson's public safety issue, the number of JPD officers seems to keep dropping. These internal clearance sheets obtained exclusively by 3 on Your Side show those no longer with the department. Since February, JPD records show 17 left the ranks, 10 were patrol officers. What's the reasoning behind the departures? Chief Davis told fellow officers Friday at a crime stats meeting that those kinds of manpower shifts are normal.
You hear all over the media about people leaving, people coming. That's nothing new. You're going to always have a turnover in police. People retire, people leave, people get sick. For whatever reason, they're leaving.
Current and former officers tell a different story, though. They say low morale, poor pay, and a lack of leadership are behind it.
We lost good officers, and there's various reasons. Some officers feel like that it's not a pro-police environment, and then most importantly is the amount of money that we pay people to go out and risk their lives on a daily basis.
Councilman Aaron Banks says the starting salary for a JPD officer is $25,000. Compare that to the lowest paid deputy chief, who makes $67,000. Now, Davis hasn't said anything about these claims from officers recently, but back in January, he did.
Under my administration, that's completely opposite of what I'm hearing. What I'm getting from, and I'm talking to each and every one of them, Chief, we appreciate seeing you out here. We appreciate seeing the deputy chiefs out here. We appreciate seeing the commanders, instead of giving orders, they out here doing it. So it's completely different. Now, I don't know who you're talking to.
But the reality is this: the fewer patrol officers JPD has, the harder it is for the department to make sure every part of the capital city is protected. Right now, JPD says officially it has 214 active duty officers working a beat, but sources within the department say that number is much lower, 173. Now, that's a big difference. Who's right? Well, it all depends on how the numbers are compiled. Internal documents show JPD has 173 patrol officers who specifically work the city's beats. When you add 22 sergeants, 5 lieutenants, and 14 members of special operations, which includes DUI and DART, you get 214 active in patrol operations, not necessarily assigned to a beat.
The idea, the perfect number, will be about 260. Unfortunately, we don't have those numbers.
Unfortunately, Davis's statement also contradicts that October memo from Deputy Chief Harris, a memo sent directly to Davis. Harris said the minimum number JPD needs to effectively sustain day-to-day patrol operations across the city would be 264 officers. The latest documentation we've seen shows the department is short 91 officers.
I think we still owe it to the citizens to be brutally honest. People have to know where we are. They have to know how bad things are.
Now, of course, the hope here is that this story will prompt the department to be more consistently transparent about the number of officers it has and explain those numbers, how it affects you, since time has shown it takes a reporter or a city councilman to even get an answer on this. And again, Howard, as long as the department is putting out information that could be misleading, whether it's crime stats or manpower, we will investigate.
All right, CJ, thanks.